The great crystal dome of Vex Prime glowed with the light of 3 suns as hundreds of alien beings gathered inside. Their voices filled the air with strange sounds, clicks, hums, and musical tones that no human ear had ever heard. This was the Galactic Council, where the most powerful races in the galaxy made decisions that affected billions of lives across thousands of worlds. Admiral Zektar stood at the center of the dome, his tall blue form casting shadows on the crystal floor. His forearms moved gracefully as he spoke to the crowd. The hegemony had ruled space for over 10,000 years, and Zektar was one of their best military leaders. Today he had a special job: to tell the Council about the newest species that wanted to join their great alliance. Fellow Council members, Zektar began, his voice carrying easily through the dome. Today we examine the military power of a species that calls itself humanity. They come from a small blue world they call Earth, located in what they term the Milky Way galaxy. A holographic display appeared above the Admiral's head, showing images of human spacecraft floating in the darkness of space. The ships looked crude and rough compared to the smooth, elegant vessels the Council members were used to seeing. Some aliens in the crowd began to whisper among themselves, and a few even laughed quietly. Zektar pointed to the largest ship in the display. This is what humans call their most advanced warship. Notice the primitive chemical rockets they use for movement. Their fastest ships can barely reach half the speed of light, while our basic transport vessels travel 50 times faster. The whispers grew louder. Council member Velsha, a being that looked like a giant butterfly made of living metal, spoke up. Admiral, surely these images are from their early space age. No species could advance to interstellar travel with such basic technology. I am afraid not, Zektar replied with what might have been a smile on his alien face. These ships represent humanity's current peak technology. They have been building spacecraft for less than 100 years. Most of their vessels still use nuclear fission for power, though a few have primitive fusion reactors. The crowd erupted in laughter. To beings whose civilizations had mastered faster-than-light travel millions of years ago, the idea of using nuclear power seemed as primitive as rubbing sticks together to make fire. Far away from Vex Prime, on a space station orbiting Earth's moon, Captain Jake Morrison read the message that had just arrived from the Galactic Council. His weathered face showed no emotion as he read the official response to humanity's application to join the galactic community. Around him, the bridge of the experimental ship USS Defiance hummed with quiet activity. Jake was 34 years old and had spent half his life in space. He had fought in the Mars colony wars, explored the outer planets, and commanded 3 different ships. His brown hair was already turning gray at the edges, and his green eyes had seen more of the universe than most humans could imagine. But nothing had prepared him for this message. Listen up, everyone, Jake said to his crew. The Galactic Council has made their decision about Earth. He cleared his throat and began to read. After careful review of human military capabilities, the Council hereby classifies humanity as a Grade C species. You are granted permission to establish colonies in Sector 7749, located in the Outer Rim territories, far from any strategic trade routes or important worlds. Chief Engineer Lisa Martinez looked up from her workstation where she had been adjusting the ship's power systems. She was a small woman with black hair and dark eyes that seemed to burn with inner fire. Her hands were always dirty from working on engines, and she knew more about spacecraft than most aliens who had been building them for centuries. Grade C? Lisa asked, her voice tight with anger. What does that mean? Jake continued reading. Grade C species are considered to have limited technological development and minimal military threat potential. Such species are restricted to Outer Rim territories and may not participate in Council military operations or advanced technology sharing programs. Dr. Nathan Cross, the ship's science officer, pushed his glasses up his nose and looked at the data streaming across his computer screen. Nathan was tall and thin with sandy brown hair and blue eyes that missed nothing. He had spent years studying alien technology recovered from crashed ships, trying to understand how other races had mastered the secrets of space travel. Captain, Nathan said quietly. I've been studying the technical specifications they released about their fleet capabilities. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but there's something strange about it. What do you mean? Jake asked. Nathan pulled up a holographic display showing dozens of alien ship designs. Look at these vessels from different races. The Hegemony, the Crystalline Empire, the Void Dancers. They're all built using the same basic principles. Same power distribution patterns, same weapon systems, same shield configurations. It's like they all learned from the same textbook and never tried to improve it. Lisa wiped her hands on a dirty cloth and walked over to look at the display. That's weird. When we humans build something, we immediately start thinking about how to make it better. We modify, we experiment, we break things and rebuild them stronger. Exactly, Nathan said. Their ships are perfect, but they're also identical. Where's the innovation? Where's the creativity? Amy Johnson, the communications officer, looked up from her station. She was young and blonde, with sharp blue eyes and quick reflexes that made her perfect for handling the complex alien communication systems. Sir, I'm picking up more transmissions from the council session. They're still talking about us. Jake nodded. Put it on screen. The image showed Admiral Zektar still addressing the Galactic Council. The humans have also submitted requests for advanced technology sharing, particularly in the areas of faster-than-light communication and energy shielding. However, given their primitive understanding of quantum mechanics and their dangerous tendency to modify equipment beyond safe parameters, the Technology Committee recommends complete restriction of advanced systems. Another alien, this one looking like a living tree with golden bark, spoke up. Admiral, their application mentions something called battlefield modifications. What does this mean? Zektar's expression showed disgust. Apparently, humans have a habit of changing their equipment during combat operations. They remove safety systems, overload power cores, and jury-rig repairs using whatever materials are available. Such practices would be considered criminally reckless by any civilized species. The tree being made a sound like wind through leaves. How do they survive such dangerous practices? Frankly, we are not sure, Zektar replied. Human casualty rates should be much higher given their methods, yet somehow they continue to function. It is most puzzling. Back on the Defiance, Jake's crew listened to this exchange with growing anger. These aliens were talking about them like they were children playing with dangerous toys. 12 years, Lisa said, her voice barely controlled. 12 years I've spent developing the modifications on this ship. We've pushed fusion technology further than anyone thought possible. Our electromagnetic field generators can do things that would make their engineers weep with joy. And they think we're playing games. Nathan was studying more alien technical data. Captain, I'm seeing something in their fleet organization. Every ship has the same crew size, the same command structure, the same tactical responses. It's like they're all following the same manual. Maybe they are, Jake said thoughtfully. Amy, are you getting anything else from their transmission? Amy adjusted her headset. Yes, sir. Admiral Zektar is concluding his presentation. He's recommending that humanity be assigned to patrol duty in the Outer Rim, where they can't interfere with important operations. The transmission continued with Zektar's final words to the Council. In summary, while humans show admirable courage and determination, their technological limitations and unsafe practices make them unsuitable for meaningful participation in galactic affairs. I recommend we grant their request for membership, but keep them safely isolated in the frontier regions where they can do no harm to themselves or others. Jake turned off the transmission and looked at his crew. These 4 people represented the best that humanity had to offer. Lisa could make any machine work better than its designers intended. Nathan could solve problems that stumped entire alien research teams. Amy could communicate with species that had never heard of Earth. And Jake himself had led them through dangers that would terrify most galactic citizens. Well, team, Jake said with a grim smile, looks like we're heading to the frontier, at least out there. We'll have room to show these aliens what human ingenuity really looks like. None of them knew that in just a few months, they would get exactly that chance. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is underestimate someone who has nothing left to lose. 3 months had passed since the Galactic Council sent humanity to the frontier regions of space. The USS Defiance now patrolled the Kepler sector, a quiet area of space that the Council considered safe for primitive species like humans. There were no important trade routes here, no valuable planets, and no strategic military positions. It was the perfect place to keep troublesome newcomers out of the way. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the stars drift past on the main screen. The Kepler sector might be considered unimportant by the aliens, but Jake found it beautiful. Dozens of young star systems sparkled in the darkness, some with planets that might one day support human colonies. "Captain," Chief Engineer Lisa Martinez called from her station, "I've got those power readings you wanted to see." Jake walked over to Lisa's engineering console where streams of data flowed across multiple screens. Lisa had been using their time in the quiet sector to push the Defiance beyond its original design limits. What she had accomplished would have amazed the alien engineers who thought human technology was primitive. "We're pulling 17% more power from the fusion core than the manual says is safe," Lisa reported. Her dark eyes gleamed with pride as she showed Jake the modified power flow diagrams. "The electromagnetic field generators are holding steady, but they're running hot. Real hot." Jake studied the numbers on her screen. By all the safety rules that governed spacecraft design, the Defiance should have suffered a catastrophic failure weeks ago. But Lisa had found ways to make the impossible work. She had rerouted power conduits, modified cooling systems, and rebuilt entire sections of the ship's electrical grid. "Any other captain would order you to dial it back to safe levels," Jake said with a slight smile. "Good thing you're not any other captain," Lisa grinned back. "Besides, safe is boring. We didn't come out here to play it safe." Dr. Nathan Cross looked up from his science station where he had been studying data for hours. "Captain, I've been analyzing the fleet movement patterns that Amy's been monitoring. There's something you need to see." Nathan transferred his data to the main screen, showing the recorded movements of Galactic Navy ships over the past several months. Dozens of alien vessels moved through space in perfect formations, their paths creating neat geometric patterns that looked like they came from a textbook. "Look at this," Nathan said, pointing to the display. "Every engagement follows the same, basic pattern. Formation Alpha 7 for initial contact, transition to Formation Beta 4 for flanking maneuvers, conclude with Formation Gamma 1 for final assault. It's like they're all following the same playbook." Amy Johnson, the communications officer, turned in her chair to face the group. "I've been listening to their tactical communications during training exercises. They use the same command codes, the same response patterns, even the same timing for everything. It's incredibly organized, but also incredibly predictable." Jake frowned as he studied the alien fleet movements. "In the Mars colony wars, we learned that predictable tactics get you killed fast. The side that can adapt and improvise usually wins." "That's just it," Nathan said excitedly. "These aliens have been using the same tactics for thousands of years. They've perfected them, refined them, made them flawless. But they've never had to face an enemy that doesn't follow their rules." Before Jake could respond, Amy's communication board erupted with urgent alerts. Red lights flashed across her console as emergency signals filled the bridge with harsh electronic sounds. "Captain, I'm picking up long-range distress calls," Amy reported, her fingers flying over her controls. "Multiple sources, all broadcasting on emergency frequencies." Jake moved to Amy's station. "What are they saying?" Amy's face went pale as she translated the alien communications. "Sir, it's bad. Really bad. Something called the Void Hunters has been detected moving toward this sector. The aliens sound terrified." Nathan immediately began pulling up files on his computer. "Void Hunters. I've heard that name in some of the classified reports from Earth Intelligence. Let me see what I can find." Within minutes, Nathan had accessed every piece of information that human agents had gathered about this mysterious threat. What he found made his blood run cold. "Captain, the Void Hunters aren't like other alien races. They're nomads, raiders who travel from system to system, consuming everything in their path. Their ships are living creatures evolved specifically for warfare and destruction. Even the Galactic Council fears them." Jake studied the limited data on his screen. The few images available showed massive organic ships that looked like nightmares come to life. They were covered in bioluminescent weapons and seemed to pulse with their own internal life. "How many ships are we talking about?" Jake asked. Amy continued monitoring the emergency communications. "The long-range sensors are detecting at least 40 vessels, sir. Maybe more. They're heading directly for Haven Prime." Jake's jaw tightened. Haven Prime was a human colony world, one of the first settlements established in the Kepler sector. 40,000 men, women, and children lived there, building new lives on a planet that was supposed to be safe. "What's the nearest Galactic Navy response?" Jake asked. Amy checked the fleet positioning data. "The closest patrol is 6 days away at maximum speed. The Void Hunters will reach Haven Prime in less than 2 days." The bridge fell silent as the crew realized what this meant. 40,000 innocent people were going to die, and there was no one close enough to help them, except the USS Defiance. Dr. Nathan Cross broke the silence. "Captain, I've been running tactical simulations based on the available data. The Void Hunter ships are massive, probably 10 times our size. Their bioweapons can crack planets. Our chances of survival in a direct engagement are basically zero." Lisa looked up from her engineering station. "Nathan's right about the numbers, but he's thinking like an alien. We don't have to fight them the way the Galactic Navy would fight them." Jake walked to the center of the bridge and looked at each of his crew members. These were the best people humanity had to offer, and they were being asked to do the impossible. But impossible was something humans had never been very good at accepting. "Amy, send an emergency message to Earth Command. Tell them we're moving to intercept the Void Hunters. Nathan, I want everything you can find about these creatures, weaknesses, behavior patterns, anything that might help us. Lisa, I need you to give me modifications that will make the aliens' perfect little ships look like antiques." Lisa's eyes lit up with the kind of dangerous enthusiasm that made alien engineers nervous. "How far beyond safe parameters are we willing to go?" Jake's answer would become legendary among human spacers. "Lisa, forget the parameters. Forget the safety margins. Forget everything except saving 40,000 lives. I want you to make this ship do things that physics says shouldn't be possible." Nathan was already deep in his analysis of Void Hunter biology. "Captain, these creatures hunt by following predictable patterns. They surround their target, bombard it into submission, then move in to consume everything. But what if we don't act like a typical target?" "What do you mean?" Jake asked. Nathan's excitement grew as his idea took shape. "What if instead of running away or trying to fight them head-on, we do something completely unexpected? What if we attack them in ways they've never encountered before?" Amy was monitoring more emergency transmissions. "Sir, the evacuation ships from Haven Prime are requesting immediate assistance. They can't get everyone off the planet in time." Jake made the decision that would change everything. "Plot a course for Haven Prime, maximum burn. We're going to park ourselves between those monsters and innocent people, and we're going to hold the line." Lisa was already implementing modifications that would have horrified the safety inspectors back on Earth. "Captain, what I'm about to do to our ship systems will either make us the most dangerous vessel in this sector, or it'll turn us into the most expensive firework display in galactic history." "I have faith in your engineering, Lisa," Jake replied. "Besides, boring never saved anyone's life." As the Defiance changed course toward Haven Prime, her crew began preparations for a battle that every tactical manual said they couldn't win. But then again, humans had never been very good at reading tactical manuals either. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't the biggest gun or the strongest shield. Sometimes it's the willingness to try something that everyone else says is impossible. The USS Defiance raced through space toward Haven Prime at speeds that made her hull plates glow with heat. In the engineering section, Chief Engineer Lisa Martinez worked like a woman possessed, her hands moving quickly between control panels, as she implemented modifications that would have been impossible on any other ship in the galaxy. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits as Lisa rerouted power from every non-essential system on the ship. The lights dimmed as she fed more energy to the engines. The artificial gravity fluctuated as she borrowed power from the field generators. Even the air recycling system was running on minimum power to give the fusion reactor every possible advantage. "The power grid is screaming at me," Lisa called to Captain Jake Morrison over the ship's communication system. Her voice was tight with concentration as she welded new connections with one hand while adjusting flow regulators with the other. "I'm pushing electrons through circuits that were never designed to handle this kind of load." Jake's voice crackled back through the speakers. "How long can she hold together?" "Honestly, I have no idea," Lisa replied, sweat dripping from her forehead as she worked. "Alien ships have safety systems that prevent this kind of modification. Their computers would shut everything down rather than risk damage. Good thing we're not aliens." On the bridge, Dr. Nathan Cross had spread his research across every available screen. Hours of studying Void Hunter biology were finally paying off as he began to understand how these terrifying creatures operated. "Captain, I think I've found something," Nathan said, his voice filled with excitement. "The Void Hunters aren't just ships with crews inside them. They're actually living creatures, complete organisms that have evolved for space travel and combat." Jake moved to Nathan's station to look at the biological scans. The images showed massive creatures that looked like a nightmare mixture of jellyfish and whale, their translucent bodies pulsing with internal organs that served as weapons and engines. "That means they have nervous systems," Nathan continued. "They feel pain, they can be confused, and most importantly, they can be overwhelmed if we hit their sensory organs with the right kind of stimulus." Amy Johnson looked up from her communications console where she had been monitoring the evacuation efforts on Haven Prime. "Sir, the colony ships are reporting that they need at least 37 hours to get everyone to minimum safe distance. The Void Hunters will arrive in 18 hours. Jake studied the tactical display showing the approaching alien fleet. 17 massive creatures moved through space in a formation that looked almost like a school of deadly fish. Each one was larger than a city, their bioluminescent weapons already beginning to glow as they prepared for planetary bombardment. "Nathan, you said we can confuse them. How?" Nathan pulled up a new display showing the electromagnetic spectrum. "These creatures navigate and hunt using bioelectrical fields. They're incredibly sensitive to electromagnetic radiation. If we can generate a powerful enough pulse at exactly the right frequency, we might be able to overload their nervous systems." Lisa's voice came through the speakers again. "I can give you electromagnetic pulses, but not the kind you're thinking of. I'm talking about pulses that will fry every circuit on this ship if we're not careful. We'll get one shot, maybe two, before our own system shut down." Jake walked to the center of the bridge and looked at each of his crew members. They were asking him to approve a plan that had never been tested, using technology that was pushed far beyond safe limits against an enemy that even the mighty Galactic Council feared. "Do it," Jake said simply. "Prep for electromagnetic pulse deployment. We're going to show these creatures something they've never seen before." Amy's console erupted with new signals. "Captain, we're dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the Haven system. Visual contact with the Void Hunter fleet in 30 seconds. The main screen flickered and then showed the enemy for the first time. The Void Hunters were even more terrifying in person than in the intelligence reports. 17 massive organic shapes moved through space like living nightmares, their bodies pulsing with internal light as bioweapons charged for attack. The lead creature was the largest, easily 10 times the size of the Defiance. Its body was covered with what looked like eyes, each one the size of a building. Rows of bioplasma cannons ran along its sides like the ribs of some impossible beast. As the human ship appeared, all of those eyes turned to focus on the tiny intruder. "My God," Amy whispered. "How are we supposed to fight that?" Jake's answer was pure human stubbornness. "We don't fight it. We outsmart it." Lisa's modifications were complete. Every system on the Defiance was running at levels that would have horrified safety inspectors throughout the galaxy. The fusion reactor was producing 40% more power than its rated capacity. The electromagnetic field generators were charged to dangerous levels. Even the hull was radiating excess heat like a glowing coal. "All systems ready," Lisa reported. "Captain, what I've done to this ship, we're basically a flying bomb waiting to explode. One wrong move and we'll light up this system like a new star." Nathan had finished his targeting calculations. I've identified the primary sensory clusters on the lead creature. If we can hit them with a coordinated electromagnetic pulse, we might be able to blind it temporarily. But we'll have to get close. Really close. The Void Hunter fleet had noticed. The tiny human ship. The lead creature's bioplasma cannons began to glow brighter as it prepared to swat what it probably thought was just another annoying insect. Jake took his position in the captain's chair and gripped the armrests. Amy, send a message to Haven, Prime. Tell them that Earth doesn't abandon its people. Nathan, prepare your targeting solution. Lisa, stand by for full power on my command. The first blast from the lead Void Hunter lit up space like a miniature sun. The bioplasma bolt passed close enough to the Defiance that her hull plating actually began to melt from the radiant heat. But Jake had already thrown the ship into an evasive pattern that no Galactic Navy manual would have approved. Instead of maintaining a steady course and trading shots like a proper warship, Jake flew the Defiance like a fighter craft. He dove under the creature's main body, rolled between its weapon clusters, and used the ship's modified engines to dance through space in patterns that confused the massive predator. It's trying to track us, but it can't keep up, Nathan reported, from his science station. These creatures are used to hunting slow-moving prey that follows predictable patterns. Another blast seared past the ship's hull. Jake could hear the metal groaning under the stress of his high-speed maneuvers. Lisa's modifications were being tested to their absolute limits as the ship twisted and turned through space. Lisa, I need everything you've got, Jake called. You've already got everything, Lisa replied. I'm giving you power that doesn't exist, and structural integrity that's held together by hope and good intentions. The other 16 Void Hunters were beginning to converge on the small human ship. Jake realized they had maybe minutes before the creatures coordinated their attack and turned the Defiance into space dust. Nathan, now or never. Nathan's fingers flew over his controls as he locked onto the lead creature's primary sensory cluster. Target acquired. Electromagnetic pulse generators at 140% capacity. Jake lined up the ship for the attack run that would either save 40,000 lives or end his crew's story in a blaze of glory. As the Defiant screamed toward the massive creature at a speed that made her hull glow white-hot, he gave the order that would change everything. Fire. The electromagnetic pulse that erupted from the Defiance was unlike anything ever seen in galactic warfare. It was raw, unrefined, and powerful enough to overload systems across half the solar system. The lead Void Hunter's entire body convulsed as its nervous system was overwhelmed by sensations it had never experienced. The creature's bioweapons fired randomly as it writhed in agony. Its formation broke apart as the other Void Hunters scattered, to avoid their leader's wild attacks. For the first time in millions of years of evolution, a Void Hunter had been hurt in a way it didn't understand. But victory came at a price. The Defiance's systems were failing from the massive energy discharge. 16 more creatures were converging on their position, and Lisa's miraculous modifications were finally reaching their breaking point. Captain, Amy said quietly, I'm picking up new energy signatures. Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace. Jake looked at his tactical display and smiled. 7 Galactic Navy dreadnoughts had arrived, their perfect formations and gleaming hulls looking like angels of salvation in the darkness of space. The real battle was about to begin. 7 massive Galactic Navy dreadnoughts hung in space like gleaming monuments to alien engineering perfection. Each ship was over a mile long, their hulls smooth and unmarked by the kind of hasty modifications that covered the USS Defiance. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons already charging as they prepared to engage the Void Hunter fleet. Admiral Krelvaxa of the 5th Fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the tactical display with growing amazement. The readings showed that a single human vessel had somehow wounded the lead Void Hunter, something that should have been impossible given their primitive technology. Communications, hail the human ship, the Admiral ordered. His voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded fleets for over 3 centuries. On the Defiance, Amy Johnson's console crackled to life with an incoming transmission. The alien admiral's face appeared on the main screen, his features showing a mixture of disbelief and grudging respect. Human vessel Defiance, This is Admiral Krelvaxa of the Galactic Fifth Fleet. You are ordered to withdraw immediately. This engagement is beyond your capabilities. Captain Jake Morrison looked at his crew, then back at the Admiral. Around them, the ship's systems sparked and groaned from the damage caused by their electromagnetic pulse attack. Chief Engineer Lisa Martinez was frantically trying to keep the fusion reactor stable, while Dr. Nathan Cross worked to restore their targeting systems. Jake's response would become legendary throughout the galaxy. With respect, Admiral, we're kind of busy saving lives right now. You're welcome to help, but we're not abandoning our post. Admiral Krelvaxa stared at the transmission in shock. In all his years of command, no one had ever refused a direct order to withdraw from a superior officer. The human captain's casual tone made it even more surprising. Captain Morrison, you do not understand the danger you face. These creatures have destroyed entire star systems. Your ship cannot possibly survive a sustained engagement. Jake glanced at Lisa, who was using a welding torch to repair a power coupling while standing in ankle-deep water from a burst cooling pipe. Admiral, our ship wasn't supposed to survive the last 5 minutes, but here we are. The conversation was interrupted by the return of the Void Hunters to the battle. The wounded lead creature had recovered from its shock and was now radiating pure fury. Its bioplasma weapons glowed brighter than ever as it called its pack together for a coordinated attack. 16 massive creatures moved through space toward the small group of defenders. Their formation was tight and aggressive, with smaller hunter variants darting between the larger ones like deadly fish swimming around whales. All ships, assume formation Delta 7. Admiral Krelvaxa commanded his fleet. Prepare for standard engagement protocols. The Galactic Navy dreadnoughts moved into perfect position, their weapons tracking the approaching enemies with mechanical precision. It was exactly the kind of textbook response that Nathan Cross had studied during his research into alien military tactics. Captain, Nathan called from his science station, the Admiral is using standard fleet doctrine. The Void Hunters will adapt to it quickly. Jake watched the alien formations on his tactical display. Both sides were moving like pieces in a chess game, following patterns that had been used for thousands of years. But Jake had never been good at playing by other people's rules. Amy, open a channel to the Admiral, Jake ordered. Admiral Krelvaxa, with respect, your formation won't work against these creatures. They've seen standard Galactic Navy tactics before. You need to break pattern. The Admiral's response was stiff with military protocol. Captain Morrison, the Fifth Fleet has used these formations successfully for over 2 millennia. I do not require tactical advice from a primitive species. Your choice, Jake replied, then switched to his ship's internal communications. All hands, prepare for independent action. We're going to show these aliens how humans fight. What happened next violated every principle of organized military engagement that the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of joining the neat Galactic Navy formation, the Defiance broke away and charged directly at the center of the Void Hunter pack. Jake flew his ship like it was an extension of his own body, diving between the massive creatures, while Lisa somehow kept the overloaded engines from exploding. The Defiance twisted and rolled through space in patterns that made no tactical sense, but kept her away from the deadly bioplasma blasts. Nathan, I need another electromagnetic pulse, Jake called out as he guided the ship under the belly of a particularly large Void Hunter. The generators are already overloaded, Nathan replied, his fingers flying over his controls. If we fire again, we might lose power completely. Do it anyway. The second electromagnetic pulse erupted from the Defiance just as Jake rolled the Yaoi ship past a cluster of the creature's sensory organs. The massive beast convulsed and crashed into 2 of its packmates, creating chaos in the Void Hunter formation. Admiral Krelvaxa watched this display with growing amazement. The human ship was fighting like no vessel he had ever seen, using tactics that were completely unpredictable and somehow incredibly effective. Sir, his tactical officer reported, the human vessel has disrupted their attack formation. The Void Hunters are confused. The Admiral made a decision that went against everything he had been taught about proper military command. All ships, break formation, follow the human ship's lead, adapt your tactics to the enemy's responses. What followed was the strangest battle in galactic military history. 7 advanced alien dreadnoughts found themselves learning tactics from a primitive human vessel that should have been destroyed in the first exchange of fire. The galactic navy ships began to move in irregular patterns, copying Jake's unpredictable flight style. Their weapons fired at random intervals instead of the precise timing their computers recommended. For the first time in centuries, alien crews were improvising instead of following regulations. Lisa's voice crackled over the ship's communications. "Captain, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is that our modifications are working better than I hoped. The bad news is that we're one power surge away from becoming a very expensive firework." "How long can you keep us running?" Jake asked while guiding the ship through a narrow gap between 2 void hunters. "Honestly, I stopped making predictions 10 minutes ago. We're running on borrowed time and surplus miracles." Nathan had been studying the enemy's behavior during the battle. "Captain, the void hunters are starting to retreat. They can't adapt to our random tactics. They're used to fighting enemies that follow predictable patterns." Admiral Krelvax's voice came through the communications channel. "Captain Morrison, your tactics are most effective. How do you coordinate such complex maneuvers without proper formation protocols?" Jake's answer was pure human philosophy. "Admiral, we don't coordinate. We improvise, we adapt, we figure it out as we go." The battle continued for another hour, with the combined human-alien fleet slowly driving the void hunters away from Haven Prime. The creatures, confused and frustrated by tactics they couldn't understand, finally gave up and retreated into deep space. As the last void hunter disappeared from their sensors, Admiral Krelvaxa requested permission to come aboard the Defiance. He wanted to see for himself how a primitive human vessel had accomplished what his advanced fleet could not do alone. "Permission granted, Admiral," Jake replied. "But bring a repair crew. I think Lisa could use some help keeping our ship from falling apart." The Admiral's response showed a new respect that had been completely absent from their first conversation. "Captain Morrison, it would be my honor to assist. Your crew has taught my fleet more about combat in one day than we learned in the previous century." As the galactic navy ships moved to escort the evacuation vessels from Haven Prime, Jake looked around his damaged bridge. Sparks still flew from overloaded circuits, the air smelled of burned electronics, and his crew looked exhausted from their impossible victory. "Well done, everyone," Jake said quietly. "I think we just showed the galaxy that humans don't know the meaning of the word impossible." Lisa's voice came from the engineering section, tired but triumphant. "Captain, I hate to break up the celebration, but we really need to land somewhere and fix this ship before it decides to become a nuclear explosion." Jake smiled as he watched the evacuation ships carrying 40,000 saved lives toward safety. "Amy, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the mission was successful and that the galaxy just learned something important about humanity." "What's that, sir?" Amy asked. "That sometimes the best way to win is to refuse to follow the rules." 6 months after the Battle of Haven Prime, Captain Jake Morrison stood once again before the Galactic Council on Vex Prime. But this time, everything was different. The Crystal Dome was filled with the same alien delegates, but their attitude toward humanity had changed completely. Admiral Zektar, who had once mocked human technology as primitive, now stood beside detailed holographic displays of the USS Defiance. The same ship he had laughed at was now being studied by the galaxy's finest engineers and military strategists. "Fellow council members," Admiral Zektar began, his voice carrying a respect that had been completely absent during humanity's first evaluation. 6 months ago, I presented humanity as a Grade C species with limited technological capabilities. Today, I must formally request that we reconsider this classification." The holographic display showed the battle at Haven Prime, with the small human ship dancing between massive void hunters, while 7 galactic navy dreadnoughts struggled to adapt to the chaotic fighting style. The human vessel Defiance sustained damage that should have destroyed her 4 separate times during this engagement. Admiral Zektar continued. Yet Chief Engineer Lisa Martinez kept her operational through modifications that our safety protocols would classify as impossible. In the audience, representatives from dozens of alien species studied the technical data with amazement. The human ship's power output had exceeded safe parameters by over 40%. Her structural integrity had been maintained through repairs that used materials never intended for spacecraft construction. Most shocking of all, her crew had willingly operated equipment that could have killed them at any moment. Admiral Krelvaxa, who had fought alongside the humans, stepped forward to address the council. Honored delegates, I have commanded fleets for 3 centuries. I have studied every major military engagement in galactic history, yet I learned more about combat effectiveness from Captain Morrison in one day than from decades of traditional training. The council chamber buzzed with quiet conversations as aliens discussed what they had witnessed. For species that had followed the same military doctrines for thousands of years, the human approach was revolutionary. Dr. Nathan Cross sat in the visitors section, wearing a new uniform that marked him as a special advisor to the Galactic Science Consortium. His analysis of void hunter biology had been distributed throughout the galaxy, leading to new defensive strategies that had already saved several worlds from similar attacks. The humans approach problems differently, Dr. Cross had written in his report. Where we see established patterns to follow, they see opportunities to innovate. Where we see safety limits to respect, they see barriers to overcome. Chief Engineer Lisa Martinez was not present at the council meeting. She was on the other side of the galaxy, working with alien engineers at the Crystalline Empire's most advanced shipyard. The modifications she had developed for the Defiance were being studied and adapted for use throughout the galactic fleet. The alien engineers had been horrified when Lisa first showed them her work, bypassing safety systems, overloading power, grids, and using equipment beyond its rated capacity went against everything they had been taught. But the results spoke for themselves. Your species builds ships to last 10,000 years without modification, Lisa had told them during her first lecture. We build ships to be better tomorrow than they were today. Your way gives you reliability. Our way gives us possibilities. Communications Officer Amy Johnson had established the first joint human-alien communications protocol, which was now being used by every mixed crew in the galaxy. Her ability to coordinate between species with completely different approaches to command structure had proven invaluable. Back in the council chamber, the debate continued about humanity's new classification. Some delegates argued for Grade A status, recognizing humans as a major galactic power. Others suggested creating an entirely new category for species that operated outside traditional parameters. Admiral Zektar called for order and presented the council's preliminary decision. After extensive review of human capabilities, both technological and tactical, the council proposes the following changes to humanity's status. The holographic display changed to show new star charts with human territories marked in bright blue. Instead of the small corner of space they had originally been assigned, human colonies now extended across 3 major sectors. First, humanity is hereby reclassified as a Grade A strategic partner, with full access to galactic trade routes and military cooperation agreements. The announcement was met with approval from most of the council members. Even the species that had originally opposed human membership now recognized their value. Second, human engineering principles will be integrated into the Galactic Fleet Academy curriculum. All new officers will receive training in adaptive tactics and improvised solutions. Dr. Nathan Cross smiled as he heard this announcement. The same primitive human approaches that had been mocked 6 months ago were now being taught as advanced strategy. Third, Chief Engineer Lisa Martinez will head a new joint research initiative combining human innovation with galactic resources. The goal is to develop spacecraft that can adapt and modify themselves during combat operations. Admiral Zektar paused before making the final announcement. Finally, Captain Jake Morrison and the crew of the USS Defiance will lead a new multi-species task force exploring the galaxy's frontier regions. Their mission is to investigate threats that conventional forces cannot handle using traditional methods. Jake stood and addressed the council with the same casual confidence he had shown during the battle. Honored delegates, humanity accepts these responsibilities. We look forward to showing the galaxy that sometimes the best solution is the one nobody has tried before. The council session ended with something unprecedented in galactic history. a standing ovation for a species that had been considered primitive just months earlier. Later, Jake met with his crew aboard the newly refitted Defiance. The ship still looked rough compared to sleek alien vessels, but now she was equipped with the best technology from dozens of species. More importantly, she had been designed from the beginning to be modified, adapted, and improved by her crew. "So, what's our first mission with the new task force?" Lisa asked, already eager to start working on new modifications. Jake smiled as he looked at the star charts showing their assigned territory. "We're heading to the Galactic Rim, where the really dangerous things live. Places where following the rules will get you killed, and thinking outside the box might be the only way to survive." Nathan looked up from his science station where he was studying reports of strange phenomena in unexplored space. "Captain, there are things out there that make the Void Hunters look friendly. Ancient technologies, rogue artificial intelligences, entire star systems that don't follow normal physics." Amy activated the new communication systems that would keep them in contact with ships from a dozen different species. "Sir, the other task force commanders are requesting coordinates for our first joint mission." Jake took his position in the captain's chair and looked around at his crew. They had started as rejects assigned to patrol empty space. Now they were leading the galaxy's most important exploration mission. "Amy, tell the fleet we're ready to depart. Lisa, take us to maximum burn. Nathan, start scanning for anything that looks impossible." As the Defiance and her escort fleet jumped into hyperspace, Jake reflected on how much had changed. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. The universe was vast and full of dangers that would challenge every assumption about what was possible. But for the first time in galactic history, there were beings ready to face those challenges with creativity, determination, and the absolute certainty that there was always another way to solve any problem. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly how humanity liked it.